All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're deconstructing a conflict that is escalating at, well, a truly breathtaking speed. Our sources have given us a pretty detailed roadmap of just the first 7 days, and we're about to dive into exactly what they've uncovered. 7. Just 7 days. Think about that for a second. According to the source material we're looking at, that's all it took for this thing to spiral from a few initial strikes into a massive regional crisis that's already having global implications. Just 1 week has completely redrawn the battlefield. So, to make sense of this chaos, our sources have laid out a 5-part roadmap. Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with those initial strikes, then see how the war went wide. From there, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the tech and tactics. Then we'll look at the absolutely devastating civilian and economic impact. And finally, what the sources are predicting is a very long, very difficult road ahead. Okay, so part 1. Right out of the gate, the focus of the attacks shifts, and it shifts fast, to the region's single biggest vulnerability, its energy infrastructure. Sources are reporting that oil facilities over in Bahrain were some of the first major economic assets to get hit. And the international response was basically immediate. As you can see, the UK sent more jets to Qatar, France opened up its air bases for the US. But here's what's really interesting. Look at that last bullet point. Italy. Why would Italy be sending its own air defense systems? Well, the source material gives us a pretty critical clue. And there's your answer. The sources are claiming that the existing stockpiles of those crucial interceptor missiles are running, and I quote, dangerously low. This is a huge deal. It's this reported shortage that's apparently forcing allies like Italy to jump in and plug the gaps. It suggests we're already seeing a war of attrition, where defenses are getting burned through way faster than anyone expected. Okay, so in part 2, we see how this fire starts to spread. It's not staying contained, no way. Instead, it's actively pulling in neighboring countries, turning the entire Gulf into a potential new front line. So the source describes this strategy of hitting Gulf nations like the UAE and Qatar because of their support for the US and Israel. Now, Saudi cities have been spared so far, but their air bases have reportedly been hit, and the UAE is not taking this lying down. They're moving to freeze billions in Iranian assets. And at the same time, the source points to a massive strategic shift. The U.S. has reportedly just up and left its bases in Kuwait. But this is where it gets even more complicated. The source starts raising the possibility of Israeli false flag operations. They point to an alleged attack on an airport in Azerbaijan as an example. The theory being presented is that these attacks are designed to look like they came from Iran, all to drag the U.S. deeper into the war. It creates this fog of war, where you can't be sure who's really behind some of these attacks. Which brings us perfectly to part 3, the tech and tactics. We're looking at what's called an asymmetric battlefield. That's where you have two sides with totally different capabilities. And here, we're going to dig into the source's claims about what's working and what really isn't. The source paints this really stark picture when it comes to drone warfare. On one side, you've got this super advanced $30 million Western drone, the MQ-9, and 7 of them have reportedly been shot down. On the other side, you have the much, much cheaper Iranian Shahed drone, which the source claims is actually being more effective, even taking out high-value targets like a billion-dollar radar system in Qatar. And it's not just drones. The source claims Iran is systematically outsmarting some really sophisticated missile defense systems. And the key tactic? It's pretty clever, actually. They launch a bunch of cheap decoys right alongside the real missiles, which apparently confuses the defense systems into wasting their very limited interceptors on fakes. And wow, just look at this. This graph shows the alleged result of that decoy tactic. While the official claims put the missile interception rate way up at 90%, experts cited in the source material, they've analyzed the footage and they estimate the actual rate is closer to a shocking 5%. That is a massive, massive difference, with some pretty profound implications. So you're probably asking, how is Iran launching so many missiles in the first place? Well, the source points to these fortified, sand-covered underground facilities. They're described as being incredibly hard to even find, let alone destroy, making them a really resilient threat that's tough to neutralize, even with those powerful bunker-buster bombs. And now we come to part 4. And this is where the conflict really hits home for millions of people. The source describes a deliberate strategy of inflicting what it calls civilian pain, all to put pressure on governments. And the consequences for the global economy are, well, they're huge. According to the source, over 3,600 civilian sites have been hit in just the first week. And let's be clear, this isn't just collateral damage. The list allegedly includes hospitals, football stadiums, police stations, even international airports. It's all part of this grim strategic plan. The economic fallout from this has been immediate, and it has been severe. Maersk, the world's largest shipping company, has already halted all cargo in the region. Traffic through the absolutely vital Strait of Hormuz has plummeted, which threatens a massive spike in global oil prices. And for some countries, it's already a full-blown emergency. Take India, for example. As this chart shows, a staggering 45% of its natural gas comes from Qatar, right in the middle of the conflict zone. With those supplies now at risk, the source claims the country is already having to prioritize gas for critical sectors. Rationing could be next. And this brings us to the final and frankly very sobering part of the roadmap, the long road ahead. All the signs in the source material point away from a short, quick conflict and toward a long, devastating, protracted war, with discussions allegedly now turning toward a ground invasion. The source actually outlines what it calls a potential roadmap for a ground invasion. The plan would supposedly use Kurdish forces as a front line, maybe with disguised U.S. troops mixed in with them. But they would be facing Iran's standing army of 1 million soldiers, fighting on their home turf in incredibly difficult terrain. The source literally calls it a suicide mission. And this evolving timeline really tells the whole story. The initial thinking was that this war would last just a few days. That quickly got updated to a few weeks. Now, analysts cited in the source are projecting the conflict will last all the way through September. And the question becomes, what's even going to be left of the region by then? And that brings us to our final slide. The source presents this quote as Iran's ultimate survival strategy. It's basically a declaration that they won't back down. But it's more than that. It's a stark warning that they are prepared to pull the entire global economy down with them. It leaves us with a final provocative thought. In a war that has no exit ramp, what does winning even look like?